Welcome back to the Gradually Well podcast. This is the first episode of the new year. I'm so excited and happy to be back recording. This year had a slower start than I anticipated, but it's all good. I'm just really happy to be back. I hope that you are feeling hopeful, open, rested, empowered, and ready for the new year. And if you're not feeling that way, I hope you do soon. So I have been taking this new year kind of slow, pretty intentionally. I didn't want to rush into setting any new goals or any new resolutions. And I really have just been trying to take my time and just enjoy the present and just being focused on being present instead of just trying to list everything that I wanted to do in the year right away. Also, thinking of those kind of things, I'm trying to debate if I want to switch from weekly podcast to doing bi-weekly. Since starting the YouTube channel, it's just been a little harder for me to keep up with it, but I want to be consistent for you guys. So I don't know, I think in the next week or so, I'll know whether I want to try to keep up with doing podcasts every week or switching to bi-weekly. But I know the day that I want to start uploading is Wednesdays. I was playing around a bit with what day of the week felt great, and I think Wednesdays work well, so you can expect a new episode on Wednesdays. We just need to decide if it's going to be every Wednesday or every other Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. I should hopefully have an update for you guys in the next episode. So with the new year, I'm not usually a resolutions type of girl. I don't write a bunch of them, but I do like to have like a word or a theme or quote for the year. So it did take me a couple days or maybe a week or so to see what mine was going to be, my theme. And this one was actually inspired by a post that I saw a creator, her name is Lauren, on social media. And she talked about, it was basically manifesting, but the spiritual twist on it. She called it faith talk. And she just really talked about how she started thanking God for some of the things that she wanted in her career prior to them happening. And she grew her relationship with him. It was a good post. I think I'll share it because I didn't want to misquote her, but how those things came to fruition for her. And she was just really thankful to God for that, for allowing those to come to pass. And it was just really a miracle how those things really worked out with the timing of everything. It was crazy. And that really inspired me because I have been wanting to develop my relationship with God. And that just really stuck out to me as I thought through all the different things I could work on, all the things that I could come up with, or different themes, and nothing was just really resonating. But when I saw that post, I was like, faith talk, that's the theme. That's what I'm going to focus on for the year. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just start continually put in the work, of course, for my goals, and also develop my relationship with God, but already being grateful and expressing gratitude for the things that are going to happen for me in the future. And I'm just going to be grateful and thankful and express those thanks to God for my future, basically. So I'm going to try that out the year. So my theme is faith talk. That's one thing I'm working on this year. The other thing that I wanted to work on is my routines. My routines. I just want to have healthier routines, more supportive routines of my goals. A coach actually once told me that you already have a routine. It's just a matter of if it's supportive of you and your goals or not. So sometimes you may say, oh my goodness, I want to have a bedtime routine. But the truth is you already have one. It just might include you jumping in the bed and scrolling on social media until you're ready to go to sleep, and then you go to sleep. That's your bedtime routine if you do that more nights than not. What you might want to say is you might want a more supportive routine of your sleep goals or health goals or whatever. So you may not be on social media 20 minutes before you go to bed, or instead of being on your phone, you read a book or whatever it is, you journal, you pray, any of those other things. So it's just a matter of adjusting our routines to being a routine of something that is more helpful, healthy, and supportive of your health and wellness goals. So for me, I want to adjust several of the routines that I have going on in my life so that they are more helpful, that they are more healthy, and they are more supportive of my personal goals. So faith talk and healthy routines are going to be the things that I'm really going to be focusing on this year. And I also wanted to add about the faith talk that I like that idea of faith talk more than just saying, I'm just going to work on being positive this year because it's deeper than that. It's rooted in faith. And sometimes, like, I don't know if you have ever heard of the term fake positivity or toxic positivity. I don't know if it's necessarily toxic, but it's just basically that type of positive that if something bad happens, they say, oh, at least this. And it just only focuses on the bright side of things, but it doesn't acknowledge the realness and the reality of it. So a lot of times that leaves people feeling dismissed, unheard, discarded. And sometimes we do that to ourselves and we can get to be really negative of it. So I like faith talk because while I can acknowledge the things that are present for me, it can also bring in positivity that doesn't disregard your current reality. So that's another thing I really like about Faith Talk. I can be very real about where I am and where I want to go. All right, so moving into what we're talking about this episode, if you haven't guessed it already, we are continuing with our series of going through the 8 different dimensions of wellness, which we started last year, at the end of last year. That's crazy to say. We only have 3 more left. We have covered emotional, environmental, social, occupational, and financial wellness. And today we're talking about spiritual wellness. You guessed it. And after that, we only have 2 more. Intellectual and physical wellness will be the last 2. But today it's all about the spiritual realm. So with that, we're going to, of course, talk about what exactly spiritual wellness is, some misconceptions about spiritual wellness, and how spirituality has played a part in my life. So that's what we're going to do today. I do want to give a quick, just short disclaimer here that, I am no theologian or expert in spirituality. And I know that spirituality can be a very sensitive topic and people have very strong points of views and beliefs on it. I'm not here to tell you to change. I'm just here to show you some research, share my story, and to share some facts about it, and hopefully challenge you a little bit somewhere in the midst of all of that. That's what we're here for today. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Okay. Right off the bat. So what is spiritual wellness? I found a really good definition that I want to share. There's lots of different definitions, but this one seemed to really kind of pull in what a lot of definitions were mentioning. This says spiritual wellness. It refers not to any particular religious or spiritual practices or ideology, but to the human need for meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than ourselves. This aspect of our well-being may be met through the practice of a religious faith, through a deeply felt connection to nature, or through a passion for our professional vocation. And it's interesting when you look at the 8 dimensions of wellness, or there's other lists, sometimes there's 12 dimensions of wellness, whatever that you look at when you try to define wellness and what it all entails. Not all of them will list spirituality as a dimension. They may use something similar or some other kind of phrasing, but not all of them explicitly say spiritual wellness as a dimension. But I did see that a common theme is that all of these different definitions or dimensions or list of what wellness is include that there is this human need for us to feel connected to something bigger than ourselves, and that we need to find meaning and purpose through something bigger than ourselves. And they also all seem to agree that people tend to find this meaning or purpose through a number of ways, be it religion, be it their job, or even nature. And I'm sure there's other aspects as well, but it's something within humans that just have that need in us. Basically, there seems to be this understanding that humans have this innate need to have meaning or purpose, and people are going to fill it in some kind of way. And if we don't, there's oftentimes this void, and some people really struggle with feeling like life is meaningless when there is a huge void like that needs to be filled. Not sure if that applies to everyone. I don't have the numbers or the research with that, but I looked at a lot of different wellness definitions and research that supported that people or humans do typically have that innate desire to be connected to some kind of purpose or meaning in their lives. So now with that said, let's move into some misconceptions. Now, these are not my misconceptions. These are misconceptions that spiritual people would like you to know. So let's start off strong. Have you ever heard of people that say the universe this, the universe that? Are you one of those people that talk about the universe? Well, some people that use the word the universe want you to know that a misconception is that because they say the universe, that means that they have replaced God with the universe. And they want you to know that they have not replaced God with the universe. In fact, it actually is Him. It includes Him, and the universe refers to everything. And basically, when they say the universe, it means that everything is working together. God, nature, your purpose, angels, ancestors, all of those things. Now, that might have ruffled some feathers, I know. So let's just adjust. I know that was a big one, but it's okay, I promise. That's just one thing that some people would like you to know. Misconception number 2. Some people that are spiritual would like you to know that just because they identify as a spiritual person, that does not mean that they are practicing witchcraft. I wasn't even expecting that. And I do just want to shout out my sister here. She helped me think of some of these misconceptions. I will include her Instagram in the show notes because she has a great Instagram if you want to follow it, and TikTok as well. And she's actually into sound healing. And if you are interested in a session with her, please DM her. She has the sound healing bowls and would be able to give you more information on that. So shout out to my sister India, and thank you so much for helping me think of these. Okay, so again, misconception number 2 is that the super spiritual, sometimes woo-woo spiritual people are automatically practicing witchcraft, and they just want to say that that's not always true. So do with that what you will. Third misconception. Spiritual means that you are religious. And I'm not even going to lie. I used to think that. I thought that spirituality or spiritual was the same or synonymous with religious. And it's not. So I had to do some research on how to articulate the difference. Basically, spirituality is more of a personal journey of living in alignment with your purpose and your meaning, whereas religion is something that you do with other people, and they typically have the same values, morals, codes, things like that. So that's definitely why you may run into somebody that may say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. I used to run into people like that. They would say that, and at first I didn't know what they meant. But that just may mean that they don't want to necessarily be associated with a particular religious group. And that's what they may mean. So those are 3 misconceptions about spirituality. And I just threw this out there just to show you that spirituality means so many different things to different people. It can look different to different people is what I should say, because all of it tends to have the same meaning, that it relates to your purpose and what you believe, but it does not look the same for every person that identifies as a spiritual person. So that was the point in just sharing some of those misconceptions. I'm not here to shoot down anybody's views on spirituality, but I'm here to hopefully open you up to see that what came to mind for you may not be what came to mind for your neighbor. And with that said, let's just again refer to that definition I gave in the beginning about what spirituality is. It refers not to any particular religious or spiritual practice or ideology, but to the human need for meaning, purpose, and connection to something greater than ourselves. So having said all of that, I'm sure that you can see that spiritual wellness can be such a powerful dimension. If that's what your purpose and your meaning in life is rooted in, that's going to determine what kind of life you want to live. And so it is definitely going to affect all other 7 dimensions for you. It can definitely do that, as do any of the other 7, but as we have talked about, but spirituality can definitely be a big one. So now I just kind of want to go into my relationship with spirituality and what my journey has been and kind of how it's brought me to where I am today. Now, I will start off by saying that spirituality has played a huge role in my life. My faith has played a huge role in my life. It has helped me overcome things like people pleasing and anxiety, but it's also the thing that really keeps me grounded. And I can definitely testify that being a spiritual person has brought me so much peace in my life that I would not have otherwise. And growing up, I had this really deep sense of spirituality because it really governed my whole lifestyle, from where I went to school, what church I went to, what activities I was involved in, the rules that I had in home and my home life. And on top of all of that, I was a PK, or a preacher's kid, pastor's kid. Preacher's kid is what I was. But even with this sense of what it was and all these things around my life that spirituality centered around, my journey and my path has not been linear. It has not always been like, oh, I have this deep sense of purpose and was just always super confident in that. It definitely was not that. In fact, even having grown up with that throughout my childhood, there was still so much that I had to learn, and there were things that I had to unlearn. And for me, spirituality, as you may have told, especially when I said I was a preacher's kid, a lot of it was tied to religion for me as I grew up in the church. But I would say that my relationship with spirituality, if I had to sum it up, it was very much tied to religion. And my relationship with religion kind of went from a focus on rules to me feeling resentful to me focusing on relationship. And if you didn't catch all three of those started with R's: religion, rules, resentment, and relationship. That's a very churchy thing for me to do. And I didn't even do that intentionally. It's just what came out. So anyway, as I was growing up, I looked to people so much for permission to do things, permission to say things, believe things, whatever. I just looked for permission, and I honestly was just always looking for someone to kind of tell me what to do, because I thought that's what I had to do. And I'll tell you this kind of a story. I remember being a teenager, and I was just always really kind of motivated and always interested in growing and kind of into self-development. So I would look for a mentor. Once I heard that, oh, you should get a mentor, I took that to heart, and I remember asking different women to be my mentor, and I would research how to find them. And I genuinely tried, and the answer was always no. And I just did not understand that. And I felt like any time that I was looking for someone to go into a mentorship relationship with me, or to get some kind of a focus, I don't know, not necessarily coaching, but mentor kind of relationship or insight or direction, the answer was always no, it seemed to be. And I just could not figure out why. Now, hindsight, I believe that God blocked me being able to have a mentor in those years, because I had this habit of like having an unhealthy attachment to people's words, especially if you were like an authority figure, or especially if you were going to be my mentor. I believe that with the state that I was in, I might have held on to their word too much, and that would have been another thing that was getting in the way of my relationship with God, and it would have been another person that I was turning to instead of God for direction for my life. Now, with all of that said, I definitely do believe that there is benefit in formal mentor-mentee relationships, and I'm glad that they exist, and I would be open to even having that relationship. But I'm just saying, in the past, I think that there was a reason why I wasn't able to find one in the past, because it would not have been good for me with my thinking that I had then. And it wasn't until I was in college, I remember I was talking to a professor, and I can't remember what exactly I said to her, but I expressed that it was just difficult to find a mentor, and that I needed help and nobody wanted to mentor me. And she just looked at me and she told me that, she's like, Mariah, well, I can mentor you. And she also told me that it doesn't always have to be such a formal relationship. You can just have mentored moments. And that's just when you are learning from somebody, or when someone is pouring into you that maybe has walked your path before, and you share that moment together. And in that moment you were mentored, and then that's it. It doesn't have to be this ongoing formal, like we set up the dates that we talk and check in. There's value in just having mentored moments. And that was really good for me to hear. I needed to hear that, because it really helped me to be aware and be really open to the drops of wisdom that people were pouring into me in just moments throughout my life. Like, it didn't always have to look the way that I thought a mentored relationship would look like. And I realized that I had been being mentored by different people at different times through different stages. And I had access to so much wisdom from people that had walked similar paths to me. And I just had to be open to listening to it and applying it to my life. So the idea of having mentored moments was really transformative to me because it just made me more open and aware of what mentorship could look like. And it didn't have to look like the only way I thought it had to look. And I feel like having mentored moments through my teenage years and early adult years was really important to me. It helped me see that people can help guide you and they can even mentor you, but no matter their expertise, nobody in this world can be an expert on you. You are the only person that is qualified to become an expert on you. I could be an expert in human behavior and know tendencies and ideas and stuff, and it's still not going to make me an expert in you. And I had to learn that I can ask for all the permission in the world. I could try to impress people with following all the rules, being the as perfect as I could be person, and get all the advice from people that are esteemed or whatever. And they could tell me whatever they need to tell me, and it still may not be what's right for me, you know? And that was a really big lesson that I had to learn, that one, not everybody is going to agree. So you're going to have all these conflicting advice anyways, just, depending on who you ask, people are going to say different things. So it's really important that you learn what applies to you, what does not. And that also nobody else is going to be an expert on you. And that really helped me stop looking for everybody else, or not everybody, but for certain people and the authority figures to tell me what to do with my life and my thinking. I didn't need them to tell me how to live my full life. I didn't need them to give me permission. They can mentor me. They can give me their wisdom and their recommendations, but I am the expert on me, and I can continue to become the expert on me, just like you can become the expert on you. And this was also really good for me to learn, because in time I also learned that, similar with my relationship with God, it cannot be controlled or dictated by any other person in this world. So they cannot say what my relationship with God is and what it isn't. And the other thing is, when you let too many people have a voice in your relationship with God, that's when it gets hard to have an authentic, genuine, real connection with God. Because if you're in your mind like, okay, and they have a relationship with God, but so-and-so says it has to look like this, and so-and-so says it has to be this, and so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, it gets real foggy real quick. And it can feel performative. It can look performative. It can feel inauthentic. It can be disingenuous, and it can get really muggy, and then you can get displaced anger and frustration, and then before you know it, you're just like, forget religion, forget people, forget God. That's what can happen, unfortunately, when there's too many voices going on there. And for me, that's what happened. I had a really big lack of clarity because I was just trying to have too much input, trying to gather too much input. And over time, I had to learn that my standards for myself are not going to look the same as every other person that identifies as a Christian. It's just not. And that's okay. And I can have the same values, such as God. I can value community just like some other people do. But our standards for living out those values and appreciating those values may look completely different. And a quick example of that is that, like, growing up, the standard for people, for me, was that I had to wear skirts for my church. And that was just the standard. And as an adult, I have decided that that is no longer a standard that I need to have for myself and in my relationship with God. And that's just what it is. Some people may still have that standard and some people do not. Doesn't mean I don't value God. Doesn't mean they don't value God. It's just that there's a difference in standards there. But through going all of that, I had gotten caught up in trying to be perfect with following every single rule that there was. And over time, because I kept falling short, it made me resentful. Well, honestly, kind of resentful to this religion, and it was because I was holding myself to an unrealistic standard. But it wasn't until I was able to zero in on my relationship with God that I was able to see that religion and spirituality wasn't all about the rules, and that it wasn't about what other people said that it should look like for me. What was most important was my relationship with God, and that religion was supposed to draw me closer to Him. And I remember this when I was really struggling with resentment towards religion and to people, and just honestly with being a Christian, God would always bring this one verse to mind, and I'm gonna read it to you. The verse is, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And that's Matthew 11:29 and 30. So I would always think of those verses, how God's burden is light. And I just remember thinking like, this isn't light. This isn't light. This is burdensome. This is heavy. This is just, it was dreadful. It felt dreadful. It felt heavy. And I think it was no coincidence that I would think of that verse. I think it was God's way of telling me that what I was doing, how I was going about my religious and spiritual relationships was not it. It was not what he had designed. It was not as it was intended to be. And I had to reevaluate how I was living. If I'm like, God didn't tell me to be the perfect rule follower. God didn't tell me to get permission from every person that I saw as an authority figure. He told me to have a relationship with him. And, there's other things too. I'm not to diminish those. But basically, there was a lot that I was doing that he didn't say to do. And because I was doing all these other things, it made my relationship feel heavy and not light. I knew Christianity didn't mean that I was going to automatically have an easy life because I identified as a Christian. By any means, that's not what it means. But I knew that what I was doing was not right and it was not aligned, because every time I would just get overwhelmed and kind of resentful, that verse would come to mind. So I'm really grateful that it did, and I'm glad that I got the hint and was able to redirect my efforts. I share this just to say that if you have struggled with your spiritual wellness, if you have walked away from investing in your sense of spirituality, or if you're struggling with it and you're struggling with your wellness with it, your sense of purpose, your connection to God, I just really want to encourage you to not let negative experiences keep you from developing your relationship. It doesn't have to be what it was in the past. It doesn't have to be the way how you've only seen it and other people. It could look like something you haven't seen before. So I just really want to encourage you to not write off spiritual wellness, not write off a relationship with God because of the past or because of people. Definitely not because of people. I hope this episode has given you something to think about. And again, I know spirituality and religion are very sensitive, and this conversation barely scratched the surface as to what we could go into. But I hope that this did provide some encouragement if you have ever felt, or if you're currently feeling overwhelmed with your relationship in spirituality. And I believe that if you listen to this episode, it was for a reason, be it that even if it's just that you're somewhat interested in spiritual wellness or you're just curious, there was definitely a reason why you were able to listen to it today. And I hope you just take this sign that you shouldn't give up and you should continue to invest, learn, grow, research, and talk about it. That's why we're here. I want us to talk about things that are maybe uncomfortable, that maybe can be a little bit taboo, so that there's not an area of our life that we are afraid to address. So I hope that this has provided some encouragement, some thoughts, anything positive for you. Be sure to share this episode with a friend and maybe even talk about spirituality and your thoughts with your friend. I would love to hear your thoughts on the show. So if you want to share your experience with spirituality, be sure to go onto YouTube and leave me a comment. I will be responding to any comments that you leave me there. Or if you don't want to put it out so it's public, you can definitely message me on Instagram. And then if you enjoyed the show, please rate it and review. You can leave reviews over on Apple Podcasts. Ratings really help. What they help is they help the show get ratings so that it's recommended more, so people will be able to discover it. And that just means that the more people that discover it, the more people can join our wellness conversations. So that's what that means. So don't forget to rate the show, leave me a comment or message me if you feel so inclined. I would love to continue the conversation. But thank you guys so much for listening. I'm glad we can start this year off well. We're talking a little bit about spirituality and purpose. But until next episode, bye.